Before we start today's video, I just wanted to start by saying that creating these free sample packs for NNXT and Decent Sampler takes quite a bit of time of mine, as well as, in the case of NNXT, money to put it on my website and keep it hosted there. So if you feel so inclined, if you wouldn't mind supporting me on Patreon or giving me a tip on Ko-Fi, it would mean a lot to me in terms of keeping me going, making this, and making it possible for me to make more stuff like this. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of the video. Hi, I'm Gershom from Dekoningtan, and today's video is all about the pig flute. How I made an instrument like this become something that I can use on the computer like this. Today's video won't focus much on the actual programming in of the VST. I want to do a separate video both for NNXT and for Decent Sampler that really explains it step by step in terms of how the creation goes. But today's video, I just wanted to focus on the basics. How does one, in a nutshell, record an instrument that's physical and then turn its samples into something they can use in the VST? Think of it a bit like a demo of both the NNXT and the Decent Sampler version of the instrument. So without further ado, let's get into it. So obviously, if you're making a sampled instrument, the first thing to do is to sample the instrument. So I'm actually going to start off with long notes, and then I'll go into short notes after that, so that I have two options for people to play with and two different types of samples that people can mess around with. For me, I like to do things in Reason first. It's the DAW I'm most comfortable in, and the NNXT Advanced Sampler just gives me a lot of parameters I can play with. So when I'm first kind of building the first edition of the instrument, having those options makes it easier for me to see what the shortcomings are of the instrument I recorded, as well as what the good points are. With all that sorted, I did have a usable instrument. However, the recordings were quite soft. And though I like the idea of being able to play very soft and sensitively, I also wanted the instrument to be usable for things that need a louder flute. So I added a few effects that would give it a little bit more boost. So that's why I build everything in NXT first. Okay, so here we have the combinator version, or the NNXT version of the pig flute. And you can also fatten the signal just to give it a little bit more body. Or you can combine the short notes and long notes. Just to have slightly more attack. Now, if I show you, you can see that there's actually lots of different samples repeating because there's different dynamic layers. We have piano, so very soft. Those are the very airy notes that you just heard probably in between there. Mezzo piano, which is a little bit louder, and then we have forte, which is the loudest I can play the flute. Besides that, down here we have the long notes and the short notes get combined into a Spider Audio merger. And then I have a little bass amp to add that fatness to it. You can also add tremolo if you want. It's just a fun effect to play with because I thought it might be interesting. And you can add reverb. And you can also add this Audiomatic, which I've set to Psyche, and it just makes the instrument sound a little different. Let me turn off the reverb. I feel like it's a bit of a mix of a phaser with a slightly chorusy effect on it. So it's just interesting, and it makes it a bit more like a pad than a flute. So when you look at all this, you can see here I've organized the samples that I had into all these different sections, so each one is told how to behave. I'll do a more in-depth tutorial on NNXT at another time, like I said. And then I have from soft to loud, and of course you can have how the things sustain, release, all that set as well. Now, because the flute's quite quiet, I've set the master volume to be extra loud. Reason in general tends to be a little quieter as a DAW than some other DAWs I've worked with, which crank things up a little louder. Down here for the short notes, you'll notice that I did not give dynamic layers. For those, it was really hard to get the short notes to have the dynamics that you do for the long notes with the breath control. And so the short notes don't have the same dynamic layers as the long notes up above. And here is the decent sampler version of the instrument. You can see that the effects are slightly different. You can control the attack, the decay, the sustain, and the release, similarly to NNXT. You can change the frequency filter, so if you want less air. That's a lot of the air gone. You still get the tone of the instrument, and it becomes a little bit more like a pad. You can also use it as a way to kind of get like a wind shushing sound in there. You also got reverb, of course. And you can control the short and long notes with their volume. In the NNXT version, I had the option to add like that bass amp, which gave a little thickness to it. I wanted to give something similar in the decent sampler version, but it doesn't quite have the same capabilities. So I've added an amp envelope that you can kind of crank up to get some distortion. But you can see it distorts differently. It's not as pleasant of a distortion. So if you do opt to use that, you'll probably need another plugin to kind of soften those harsher sounds that you get in there. But it does allow you to crank up the volume and to thicken the sound overall. Let me turn that back down. You can also do the short notes here. And they also sound nice with their delay. And you can also add chorus to it if you want. It's a little less obvious on the short notes, a little more on the long notes. And when you do this, especially with a heavy chorus, it really becomes more of a synthy sounding instrument, which I found quite interesting. And that's all from me. I hope you enjoy messing around with the instrument, whether it's the decent sampler version or the NNXT version. Have a lovely day or night wherever you are, and see you later.